The sky above the human colony was a deep shade of indigo, dotted with distant stars that twinkled like scattered gems. Orbiting high above the planet's surface, the colony's structures gleamed with polished metal and glass, reflecting the faint light of the nearby sun. Life here was orderly, efficient, and familiar to its human residents. People moved through the bustling platforms with purpose, their eyes scanning data tablets or coordinating ships in the docking bays. The colony thrived on human ingenuity, a testament to what a determined species could accomplish when faced with challenges. Ethan was among those humans. He was not a soldier, nor a diplomat, nor someone of importance by rank. He was an engineer, tasked with inspecting the colony's orbital bridges, massive structures connecting the different sections of the space station. To most, these bridges were merely infrastructure, an everyday convenience, but Ethan saw them as marvels of human invention. He loved the way the mechanical components clicked and shifted with precision, and he understood every wire, every sensor, every beam. On this day, Ethan was performing a routine check when a sudden alert flashed across his console. The message was urgent. A diplomatic delegation from a distant alien world was passing through the station, and their visit had encountered a serious problem. The alert did not give details. Ethan's heart beat faster as he grabbed his inspection tools and ran toward the nearest observation deck. Through the transparent panels, he could see the source of the problem. A section of the space bridge connecting two orbital platforms had started to collapse. Sparks flew from exposed circuits, and structural supports groaned under the strain. Suspended in the void, the bridge tilted precariously, threatening to send anyone on it tumbling into the emptiness below. And then he saw her. A figure clinging desperately to the edge, her small hands white with tension. It was the mother of the alien princess who had been visiting the colony. Her royal status was not immediately obvious, but the guards surrounding her were panicking, shouting orders, and attempting to extend safety lines. None of it worked. Time was running out. Ethan did not pause to think. His mind raced with possibilities, calculating risks and potential solutions. He knew the official protocols would take too long. He had to act now. Sprinting to the nearest small rescue craft, a single-pilot shuttle used for maintenance, he quickly entered the cockpit. Fingers flying over controls, he launched the shuttle into the void. The engines roared softly in the silence of space as he maneuvered toward the collapsing bridge. The gap was wider than he expected. The royal mother's hands trembled as she held onto the bridge, the strain of gravity and her panic making it almost impossible to maintain her grip. Ethan extended the shuttle's mechanical arm, reaching out into the void. Every second felt like an eternity, and for a moment he feared he might be too late. Then he saw her slip. Time seemed to slow. Ethan's heart leapt. He pushed the controls harder, angling the shuttle perfectly, and extended the arm just in time. The hook latched onto her belt, and with a steady pull, he brought her safely into the shuttle. She collapsed against the cabin wall, breathing heavily, eyes wide with disbelief. You saved me," she gasped, her voice trembling. Ethan only nodded, offering a small smile. "It's okay." "You're safe now?" he said simply. The shuttle landed back on the orbital platform, and the nearby guards rushed forward. Their initial skepticism turned into awe as they saw the human who had saved their diplomat's life. For Ethan, there was no time to bask in praise. He ensured the royal mother was escorted to safety before quietly retreating from the crowd. He wanted no recognition, only the satisfaction that someone had survived because of his actions. Word of the rescue spread quickly. By the time the princess herself, Alira, learned of the event, she was already impressed. Humans were known in the galaxy for their cleverness, but their physical limitations often led other species to underestimate them. To witness a human act with courage and quick thinking in a life-or-death moment challenged everything Alira had been taught. She was intrigued. She wanted to meet him personally, to understand how one of her species' visitors could display such valor. Ethan returned to his routine, inspecting other parts of the bridge that had been damaged during the collapse. He worked quickly, efficiently, as if the rescue had been just another task in his daily schedule. Yet inside, he felt a quiet pride. Humans often faced dangers without the advanced equipment or strength of other species. Their advantage lay in adaptability, in quick thinking, and in the refusal to give up. Today, that advantage had saved a life. Meanwhile, Alira observed from a distance. She had arrived on the platform quietly, disguised under a ceremonial robe. She watched the human from behind a barrier, noting his calm demeanor despite the chaos around him. There was a humility in the way he worked. a lack of concern for recognition, and a sharp intelligence in the way he assessed every danger and obstacle. For a princess accustomed to politeness and protocol, this human was a revelation. As the royal mother recovered in her chambers, Alira approached her quietly. "Mother," she said softly, "that human, he is remarkable. I want to meet him. Treat him with respect, but caution as well." He cooked a quick meal, ate quietly, and reflected on the day's events. To him, saving a life was not heroic, it was necessary. But he could not shake the feeling that something had changed. The whispers in the station, the awed looks from alien guards, and the subtle respect in the eyes of the colony's officials hinted that this act would not be forgotten. Over the next few days, Alira made arrangements to extend a personal invitation to Ethan. She wished to meet him in the palace of her home world, to understand the mind and heart of the human who had risked everything for someone else. For humans, travel between worlds was common, but for her, it was unusual to invite a stranger into the private chambers of royalty. Her curiosity was more than personal. It was a test, a way to see if humans could match their moments of courage with wisdom, morality, and honor. Ethan received the invitation with a mixture of surprise and hesitation. Accepting meant leaving the familiar safety of his colony, stepping into a world of unknown customs, and facing species far more technologically advanced than his own. But the human desire to rise to challenges, to meet the unknown with courage, pushed him to agree. He prepared for the journey, gathering supplies, studying the reports he could find on Alira's planet, and readying himself for what he could only guess would be an extraordinary encounter. The day of departure arrived. Ethan boarded a sleek interstellar vessel provided by Alira's delegation. As the engines roared and the stars streaked past, he thought of the bridge, of the royal mother, and of the moment when instinct and knowledge had guided him to act. He wondered if other species faced life with the same mixture of hope and determination, the same mix of fear and bravery. Humans had always believed they could rise to challenges, no matter how insurmountable they seemed. Today, that belief had been proven true. By the time Ethan's ship approached Alira's home planet, he was ready to meet the princess. He had no illusions of grandeur, no expectations of wealth or recognition. He carried only his intelligence, his courage, and the quiet confidence that humans, though often underestimated, could do remarkable things when the moment demanded it. Alira, watching from her palace window, saw the small ship descend against the backdrop of her world's vast landscapes. She felt anticipation and a flicker of hope. Perhaps this human could teach her more than any diplomat, any scholar, or any advisor ever could. Perhaps he could remind her that courage and ingenuity were not limited by species. As the ship landed softly on the palace platform, Ethan stepped out, his eyes taking in the grandeur of the alien architecture. He did not bow or make elaborate gestures. He merely nodded politely, a simple act that somehow conveyed respect without ceremony. Alira descended to meet him, her expression curious but warm. For the first time, two worlds, one human, one alien, stood face to face, each measuring the other, each aware that this encounter could change everything. The meeting had begun, and for both Ethan and Alira, it was a meeting that neither would ever forget. Ethan's ship hovered over the palace platform, its landing engines humming softly. Below him stretched a city of beauty and complexity that humans rarely encountered. The buildings rose in sweeping curves, crafted of metals that shimmered with colors unfamiliar to his eyes. Gardens floated between structures, full of plants that seemed to glow faintly in the alien sunlight. Bridges connected towers high above the ground, moving gently like living things. Stepping out of the shuttle, Ethan felt the weight of the moment. He was no longer in the controlled environment of his colony, no longer surrounded by humans who shared his language and customs. Here, every step would be watched, every gesture noted. Yet he did not let fear control him. Humans had always relied on curiosity, courage, and adaptability to face unknown worlds. Today would be no different. Alira approached with a small entourage, her expression calm but sharp. She was taller than most humans, her skin smooth and luminescent, eyes reflecting intelligence and curiosity. Despite the elegance of her robes, there was a strength in her posture, an awareness that she commanded attention wherever she went. Ethan bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he had learned from observing alien customs during the briefings for this visit. Alira's lips curved in a faint smile. "Welcome to my home world," she said, her voice melodic but firm. "I am Princess Alira." Humans were known for their unpredictability. Some were clever and brave, others reckless. This one had already proven himself in action, but words and composure could reveal more. She gestured toward a covered walkway leading into the palace. "Please follow me. There is much to discuss." The walls shimmered with shifting colors, responding subtly to movement and mood. Light flowed across the surfaces in patterns that seemed almost alive. The air was fragrant with unfamiliar scents, sweet but not overpowering. The floor was smooth under his boots, reflecting the ceiling in a mirror-like sheen. For a moment, he felt like a small part of a living organism, walking through a place that breathed and moved around him. Alira led him to a sitting area with a view of the palace gardens below. Floating platforms held water features, glowing flowers, and birds with metallic feathers that sang in complex harmonies. Ethan could not help but pause, marveling at the beauty. Humans often admired nature, and this place felt like nature perfected through technology. Yet he reminded himself that the purpose of this visit was not sightseeing. "Your actions saved my mother," Alira began. "I wanted to meet you to understand how a human could act with such courage when so many others would hesitate. I saw someone in danger and I acted. There was no time to think about hesitation." Humans had often been underestimated because of their physical limitations. Other species relied on strength, advanced technology, or sheer numbers. Humans relied on thinking, problem-solving, and adaptability. "I do not pretend to have all answers," he said, "but I solve problems as they come. I trust observation, logic, and intuition. That has always worked for my people." Alira asked questions about his upbringing, his experiences on the human colony, and the challenges he faced in space. Ethan answered honestly, explaining that humans had always adapted to harsh conditions, relied on ingenuity, and found solutions even when resources were limited. "You are telling me that your people survive because of their creativity, not because they are the strongest or the fastest?" Alira asked. "Yes," Ethan replied. "Strength matters, but thinking matters more. A human mind can find a way where others see only obstacles." Humans acted not only with courage, but with cleverness. That combination was rare, even among advanced species. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert from the palace security system. Alira's advisors approached quickly, speaking in hurried tones in their own language. She gestured for them to wait. Ethan looked at her, curious. "Is everything all right?" They were small, agile, and potentially dangerous. The palace guards moved cautiously to intercept them, but their protocol was slow, relying on standard procedures. Ethan's eyes scanned the scene. He noticed a weakness in the drone's coordination. They reacted predictably to the guards' movements, following programmed patterns. He suggested a plan to Alira. "If your guards change their formation unpredictably, the drone's programming will fail. They will collide or retreat. I can help coordinate." The drones faltered, their systems unable to adapt to the unpredictability. One by one, they were captured or deactivated without damage to the palace or its inhabitants. When the last drone was neutralized, Alira looked at Ethan with genuine admiration. "That was clever," she said. "Your approach is unlike anything my people usually do. You rely on understanding and adaptation rather than brute force." He visited the engineering halls, observing devices far more advanced than anything on human colonies, yet he noted flaws in their rigidity. Humans, he realized, had a kind of freedom in thinking that allowed them to approach problems in unexpected ways. Alira continued to test him, not with physical trials, but with questions and scenarios. She described hypothetical crises: a collapsing bridge on a floating city, a malfunction in a life support system, a sudden diplomatic conflict with a neighboring world. In each case, Ethan proposed solutions that were simple but effective, relying on quick thinking, observation, and human ingenuity. Her advisors whispered among themselves, some skeptical, some impressed. A human could survive in space, yes, but to navigate complex systems and offer creative solutions was rare. Alira's curiosity was fully engaged. She realized that this human could be more than a hero for saving her mother. He could be an ally, a teacher, and perhaps an example of what humans could offer to the galaxy. As evening approached, they returned to a terrace overlooking the city. Lights shimmered across the landscape, and the gardens below glowed with soft luminescence. Ethan admired the view, noting the intricate blend of technology and nature. Alira stood beside him, silent for a moment, considering the human's presence. "You are different from what I expected," she said finally. "Courage, yes, cleverness, yes, but there is also humility and honesty. Your actions are not for recognition, but because they are right. That is rare among all species. Not reckless bravery, not arrogant heroism, but a careful balance of intelligence, morality, and action. She felt a respect that transcended politics or diplomacy. Before departing for the evening, Alira extended a formal invitation. Ethan, tomorrow I wish to show you more of our systems and perhaps involve you in challenges that test not only skill but judgment. Will you accept? Humans had always survived because they relied on each other, on intelligence, and on courage. Today, he had demonstrated that even in a world far beyond human home planets, these qualities mattered. He felt a quiet pride, tempered by humility, knowing that his journey was just beginning. Alira, in her private chambers, gazed out at the stars. She thought about the human who had saved her mother and who now walked among her people with respect and skill. She felt a sense of anticipation. Humans had potential that her world had rarely seen firsthand, and this one human might be the bridge between her people and a new understanding of what humanity could achieve. As sleep approached, both human and princess dreamed of possibilities. Alliances could form, challenges could be overcome, and courage, intelligence, and morality, qualities often overlooked by more powerful species, could shine in ways that no one had anticipated. Tomorrow, the true test would begin. The next morning, Ethan woke to the soft hum of the palace. Light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Today would be different. Alira had promised him more than a tour. She intended to test him, to see whether the human who had saved her mother could think and act under pressure in ways her advisors and scholars could not. Ethan dressed simply, as he always did, and followed the attendants through winding corridors filled with strange and beautiful artifacts. Each room seemed to have a purpose, some for study, some for observation, others for training or simulations. The palace itself felt alive, as if it had absorbed centuries of knowledge and wisdom and now quietly judged all who entered. Alira met him in the main hall, her expression calm but keen. She was dressed in ceremonial robes, yet moved with the grace of someone accustomed to action. "Ethan," she said, "today will test not your strength, but your mind, your judgment, and your character. You will face situations that require decisions with consequences. How you act will tell me more than any words." Holographic projections of cities, forests, and ships filled the space, each scenario more complex than the last. Alira explained that these simulations tested problem-solving and decision-making. "They are not meant to be easy," she said. "Your choices affect outcomes. Some failures may have consequences." The inhabitants were trapped in a network of bridges and towers, and Ethan's task was to save as many as possible before disaster struck. He quickly scanned the simulation, noting weak points in the structures and escape routes. Unlike the pre-programmed protocols of the alien advisors, Ethan relied on observation and adaptability. He coordinated virtual rescue teams, creating multiple exit routes and using improvised tools to stabilize collapsing buildings. Within minutes, he had rescued nearly all the inhabitants. Alira watched silently, her eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and admiration. "Impressive," she said when the simulation ended. "You rely on creativity, not brute force." "That is rare." Instead of merely splitting resources, he sought a solution that addressed the underlying concerns of each side. He proposed creative trade agreements, shared research initiatives, and cooperative defense programs. The simulation concluded with both sides satisfied and tensions eased, a result that had never been achieved in previous trials. Alira leaned closer, impressed. "You do not act like the others," she said. "You do not follow their assumptions. You create new paths. That is human ingenuity." A series of obstacles and puzzles required both quick thinking and dexterity. Guards, advisors, and mechanical constructs observed silently. Some were skeptical of a human navigating complex alien technology. The first task involved a series of floating platforms suspended over a deep chasm. Each platform shifted unpredictably, and Ethan had to move across them to retrieve an energy module. Most advisors tried to calculate each step logically, but the platforms reacted too quickly. Ethan watched, then moved with intuition, timing his jumps and using momentum to his advantage. He reached the module with ease, earning a nod from Alira. Next came a puzzle involving energy conduits that had to be aligned to restore power to a critical section of the palace. Alien engineers usually followed strict procedures, adjusting one conduit at a time. Ethan, however, noticed patterns in the energy flow and devised a simultaneous adjustment strategy. The system stabilized faster than expected, impressing everyone present. While Ethan excelled, not all in the palace were pleased. A jealous courtier, Vizier, muttered under his breath, his eyes narrowing. Humans, he believed, were clever but fragile, and to allow one in their halls so freely threatened his status. He whispered to a subordinate, plotting a minor sabotage to test Ethan under real danger. Later, as Ethan moved through a side corridor to inspect some equipment, he felt a sudden vibration beneath his feet. The floor panel shifted unexpectedly, creating a small but dangerous gap. Instinctively, he leapt to safety, barely avoiding a fall. Alira, who had followed discreetly, appeared beside him. "It seems someone wants to test you in ways I did not plan," she said, her voice calm but firm. Ethan looked around, assessing the situation. "It was not an accident, but it is manageable. Humans adapt." He examined the panel, noting a subtle misalignment in the machinery. Using a small tool from his belt, he stabilized it. There, safe again. Some advisors hesitated, concerned about the hypothetical danger. Ethan acted immediately, coordinating evacuation routes, sealing doors to contain smoke, and using portable devices to suppress flames. By the time the simulation ended, the scenario showed no casualties, a perfect result. Another test was a moral dilemma. Alira presented a simulation in which two groups required help, but only one could receive it immediately. Some advisors chose based on political advantage. Ethan chose based on need, prioritizing the most vulnerable. The simulation acknowledged his choice as ethically correct, highlighting the value of human judgment alongside intelligence. As evening approached, Alira led Ethan to a quiet terrace overlooking the city. The sky was painted with the colors of the setting sun, reflecting off the palace structures and gardens. Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment, but also humility. Each challenge had been a learning experience, not just for him, but for those observing. "You have exceeded my expectations," Alira said softly. "I wanted to see if humans possess courage, intelligence, and wisdom. You have shown all three. You possess qualities that cannot be taught: courage, insight, and a mind willing to act. That is why you succeeded where others might hesitate." Humans, she realized, could offer unique perspectives and approaches, making them valuable partners in a galaxy often divided by power, tradition, and hierarchy. Ethan listened, humbled but attentive. He had never sought recognition or influence, but he understood the importance of building trust and cooperation. Humans thrived not only on courage and ingenuity, but also on empathy, morality, and collaboration. He knew that these qualities could make a difference in ways far beyond his own experience. The day ended with Alira arranging a private dinner for Ethan, her advisors observing from a distance. She wanted to continue learning from him, not just testing his skills, but understanding his values, thought processes, and humanity. Ethan accepted the invitation, recognizing it as an opportunity to share insights and build mutual respect. Throughout the evening, they discussed challenges across worlds: planetary engineering, space travel, diplomacy, and crisis management. Ethan explained how humans relied on observation, improvisation, and moral judgment to navigate complex situations. Alira asked questions, tested scenarios, and encouraged him to consider alien perspectives. Their conversation was not merely about solutions. It was about understanding, learning, and growth. By the time the dinner concluded, both had gained more than they expected. Alira had seen firsthand the value of human ingenuity and courage, and Ethan had glimpsed the depth of alien intelligence, culture, and organization. Trust and respect had begun to form between them, bridging species and experience. As Ethan retired to his quarters that night, he reflected on the day's events. He realized that courage alone was not enough. Intelligence and moral judgment were equally important, especially in worlds more advanced than his own. Yet, humans possessed a unique combination of qualities: adaptability, creativity, and determination. These traits, often underestimated, could allow a human to thrive even in the most challenging environments. Alira, meanwhile, gazed out from her balcony, watching the lights of the city below. She thought of the human who had saved her mother, who now navigated palace challenges with intelligence and integrity. She sensed that humanity was more than a clever species. They were resilient, resourceful, and capable of extraordinary deeds. She wondered what this human might accomplish when given even greater responsibility, and what lessons her world might learn from him. In the quiet of the palace, two worlds had begun to connect, not through politics or ceremony, but through courage, intelligence, and mutual respect. And both Alira and Ethan understood that the coming days would demand more of each of them. There would be greater tests, unforeseen challenges, and moments that could define the future of their people. But for now, they could appreciate the trust, the understanding, and the beginnings of a partnership that promised remarkable possibilities. Tomorrow, the true challenges would begin, and Ethan would have to demonstrate that human ingenuity and courage could not only survive but thrive in the complex and demanding world of alien diplomacy and power. The morning began quietly, but the calm was deceptive. Ethan had slept well, though he sensed a subtle tension in the palace. Alira met him at the entrance to the garden terrace, her expression more serious than usual. "Ethan," she said, "today will not be a test of simulations or puzzles. Today you may face real danger. Your skills and judgment will be tested in ways you have not yet experienced." The unknown was not frightening. It demanded focus, ingenuity, and courage. "I am ready," he said simply. They walked through the palace corridors toward the outer halls. Guards moved with purpose, and energy shields shimmered in the sunlight. Alira explained that a rival faction from a nearby star system had been planning an attack on her palace. Recent intelligence indicated that the faction intended to kidnap her and disrupt the leadership of her world. Although the palace had defensive systems, much of the response relied on advanced protocols that could be predictable. Alira wanted to see if Ethan's human intuition could anticipate and counter these strategies. As they reached the central command chamber, alarms suddenly sounded. Red lights flashed, casting sharp reflections across the walls. Holographic displays showed multiple intruders, drones, and small craft approaching from unexpected angles. The palace guards activated defense systems, but the attack was coordinated and unpredictable. Ethan immediately assessed the situation. The drones moved in patterns too complex for standard programming, yet there was a pattern. They reacted based on predictable assumptions about how the palace would defend itself. If the defenses acted predictably, they could be bypassed. If unpredictably, the attackers would struggle to adapt. He turned to Alira. "Your systems are strong, but they rely on patterns. If we change our approach, we can force the attackers into mistakes. Show me how humans act under real danger." Following Ethan's plan, the guards deployed a sequence of shield adjustments and decoy signals. The drones hesitated, then collided with each other, malfunctioning under the confusion. A few were destroyed by the palace's defensive turrets, while the rest retreated temporarily. Alira watched closely, her heart racing. She had expected a coordinated defense, but Ethan's approach relied on improvisation and quick thinking rather than protocol. It worked perfectly. The next wave arrived from another direction, targeting the palace gardens. Ethan noticed the attackers were attempting to isolate specific areas, particularly where Alira and her advisors might be. He instructed the guards to use the palace's floating platforms in a way that created barriers and funnels, forcing the attackers to take longer routes. Meanwhile, he controlled energy projectors to temporarily blind the drones' sensors, causing further confusion. The attackers adapted slowly, but human unpredictability kept them off balance. Ethan moved quickly between consoles, issuing instructions and monitoring outcomes. Every decision relied on observation, logic, and intuition rather than brute force. Within minutes, the immediate threat to the palace was contained. However, a new danger emerged. A small craft, piloted by an enemy agent, bypassed the outer defenses and headed straight for Alira's chambers. The palace alarms blared louder. Alira's guards rushed to intercept, but Ethan assessed the situation quickly. He realized that a direct attack on the craft could put Alira at risk. Instead, he devised a subtle plan. "Create a holographic duplicate of her chambers," he instructed. "Redirect the intruder there, then trap him with containment fields." The intruder, fooled by the simulation, entered the decoy chambers. The containment fields activated, securing the enemy without harm to Alira or the palace. Alira's eyes widened. "That was clever," she said. "You prioritize safety and efficiency, not aggression. That is truly human ingenuity." Small teams of intruders attempted various approaches, but each time Ethan anticipated their moves and used creative tactics to neutralize threats. He coordinated guards, deployed decoys, manipulated energy shields, and even used parts of the palace's gardens as obstacles. The alien advisors, who had always relied on strict procedures, watched in awe as a human mind guided strategy effectively in real time. At one point, a large enemy drone managed to breach the inner courtyard. It fired energy pulses at a structural support beam, threatening to destabilize a section of the palace. Ethan quickly calculated a countermeasure. Using a combination of magnetic fields and directional energy projectors, he rerouted the beam's force, preventing damage and causing the drone to crash harmlessly into the outer wall. Alira approached him as the dust settled. "Your actions have saved lives today, Ethan. Not only mine, but everyone in this palace. You act with courage, intelligence, and respect for life." "I did what anyone would do if they could. Humans survive by acting, by thinking, and by protecting others. That is all." The intruders had regrouped for one last attempt, coordinating a direct assault on the palace's energy core. If they succeeded, the entire defense system would fail, leaving the palace vulnerable. Alira's advisors were anxious, unsure how to respond. Ethan, however, analyzed the patterns. "Their strategy is predictable now," he said. "They expect us to defend the core directly. We will do the opposite. We will create a false vulnerability, drawing them into a trap." Not a single life was lost among the defenders, and the attackers were captured for questioning. Alira approached Ethan once more. Her expression was serious but proud. "Today you have proven something extraordinary. Humans are often underestimated. They are seen as clever but fragile, but your actions show something else entirely. You are resilient, inventive, and moral. Your courage inspires more than skill alone could." Alira publicly acknowledged Ethan's contributions, praising his quick thinking and ingenuity. The court, previously skeptical, now regarded him with respect. Some advisors, initially dismissive, nodded quietly, recognizing that human unpredictability could be a strength rather than a weakness. As night fell, Ethan and Alira stood on the palace terrace once again. The city below glimmered with lights, reflecting the calm after the storm. Gardens floated in the soft luminescence, and the stars above seemed brighter, clearer. "You have changed the way my people see humans," Alira said softly. "We relied too heavily on structure, protocol, and expectation. You have shown us that courage, intelligence, and creativity can overcome even the most advanced threats. Your actions will be remembered not as luck, but as a demonstration of human potential. Perhaps it is time my people learned that humans can be more than allies. They can be leaders, innovators, and examples." Yet recognition from an alien world, from someone like Alira, was new. It was a reminder that the qualities humans relied on could resonate beyond their own species. As they parted for the evening, Ethan returned to his quarters. He reflected on the events of the day. He had faced real danger, not simulations or tests, and had relied on nothing but observation, quick thinking, and human ingenuity. Every decision had been critical, every moment required focus and courage. Yet, as always, the satisfaction came not from praise, but from knowing that lives were safe, that the palace remained secure, and that his actions had made a difference. Alira, meanwhile, could not sleep. She looked out over her city, thinking of the human who had saved her mother and who had now saved her palace. She realized that humanity was more than a clever species. It was resilient, adaptable, and capable of extraordinary deeds when needed. She wondered what other humans might accomplish if given similar opportunities and trust. In the quiet of the night, the palace rested under its restored defenses, yet both human and princess knew the future would bring more challenges. Today had been a test of courage and ingenuity. Tomorrow would require trust, cooperation, and perhaps even greater displays of human creativity. For now, however, the palace was safe, and one human had shown that courage and intelligence could shape the outcome of even the most dangerous situations. The galaxy might underestimate humans, but as Alira and Ethan knew, that underestimation could be their greatest advantage. The morning after the attack, the palace was quiet but alive with activity. Guards patrolled more carefully, engineers inspected the repaired systems, and advisors whispered among themselves, still processing the events of the previous day. Yet amidst all this, the atmosphere was lighter, tinged with relief and anticipation. The human who had saved the palace, Ethan, was preparing for a day he had never expected, a formal ceremony of recognition by Princess Alira herself. Ethan walked through the corridors with calm confidence. He was not used to grand halls or formal ceremonies, but he had learned that courage and intelligence mattered more than appearances. His clothing was simple, a contrast to the flowing ceremonial robes of the alien attendants, yet he did not feel out of place. Humans often relied on practicality rather than decoration, and in this moment practicality had already proven invaluable. Alira met him in the main hall. Her expression was serene, yet her eyes shone with pride and respect. "Ethan," she said, Today you will not only be recognized, but your example will be shared with my people. They must understand the value of courage, intelligence, and human ingenuity. Your actions have taught us much, and we must remember them. That is all any human, or any person, can do in a dangerous situation. Citizens, guards, and advisors assembled in orderly ranks, while holographic projections displayed the events of the previous day, the drones, the intruders, the defense strategies, and the human who had orchestrated it all. Whispers ran through the crowd as they observed Ethan's calm, intelligent leadership in the simulations and real action. Alira stepped forward, her voice carrying across the assembly. Today, we honor a human who has proven that courage and intelligence are not bound by size, species, or expectation. Ethan of the human colonies has saved my life, my mother's life, and the lives of countless others. He has demonstrated that ingenuity, morality, and determination can shape the outcome of any challenge. Alira continued, her gaze steady on Ethan. Let this day be remembered as the beginning of a new understanding. Humans may be seen as small, fragile, or unpredictable, yet today they have shown qualities that all species can respect. Bravery, insight, and morality can overcome the greatest obstacles. Humans did not seek recognition, yet acknowledgement from Alira and her people was meaningful. It represented more than praise. It represented respect, equality, and the acknowledgement that courage and intelligence mattered across worlds. After the formal ceremony, Alira invited Ethan to walk with her through the gardens. The air was fresh with the scent of alien flora, and streams of light reflected off metallic leaves. Ethan, she said softly, today my people have seen what I have known since I first met you. Humans are more than clever. They are adaptable, moral, and capable of extraordinary deeds. I hope this will be the start of a lasting bond between our species. Humans value cooperation, intelligence, and morality. If those qualities are appreciated and respected, we can accomplish much together. That is how we thrive. Political tensions with neighboring systems remained, trade negotiations required careful attention, and the preservation of knowledge and technology was essential. Yet she saw an opportunity now. With humans as allies, her world could approach problems with fresh perspectives and ingenuity previously overlooked. Ethan listened carefully, noting the complexities of alien politics and infrastructure. Unlike humans, who often relied on adaptability in isolated circumstances, Alira's people had resources and technology beyond imagination, but sometimes lacked the flexibility to respond to unexpected situations. Humans, he realized, could complement their strengths, providing creativity and rapid problem-solving where structure alone was insufficient. Over the next days, Ethan worked alongside Alira and her advisors, contributing ideas for defense systems, urban planning, and strategic simulations. His input was practical, simple, and effective. He suggested improvements to energy shield deployment, resource distribution during crises, and evacuation procedures for large populations. Alira observed him closely, pleased not only with his results but with his approach. He never sought personal credit. He focused on solutions, on safety, and on efficiency. Word of Ethan's contributions spread beyond the palace. Citizens, engineers, and scholars spoke of the human who had saved the palace, offering new ideas and strategies. Many began to see humanity in a new light, not just as clever outsiders, but as potential partners, leaders, and allies. Alira arranged for a private moment with Ethan. They stood on a balcony overlooking the gardens, where floating lights shimmered and the city hummed softly in the distance. You have shown courage, intelligence, and morality, she said. But more than that, you have taught us a lesson, that even a single individual acting with honesty and ingenuity can change outcomes, save lives, and inspire others. That is the essence of humanity. Then let us ensure that your people and all humans are welcomed as equals in our world. Your actions have proven that they are more than capable. They are extraordinary. His advice was practical and grounded, yet innovative. Humans, she realized, were not only capable of survival, but of leadership, creativity, and innovation on a scale her people had rarely witnessed firsthand. One evening, as the stars glittered across the sky, Alira and Ethan observed a distant spaceport where new ships were being launched. Trade, diplomacy, and exploration were beginning to flourish, guided by cooperation between humans and her people. Alira turned to Ethan. Your presence here has changed more than this palace. It has changed how we see humans and how we approach the galaxy. That is a rare gift. But if my actions help humans and your people work together, then it is more than enough. Alira herself ensured that human contributions were recognized in official records, speeches, and ceremonies, cementing their place in her world's history. Through it all, Ethan remained humble. He never sought reward, only the satisfaction of knowing that cooperation and intelligence had saved lives and strengthened bonds between species. Humans, he reflected, often achieved greatness not by seeking it but by acting rightly with courage, ingenuity, and empathy. One day, Alira invited him to walk through the palace gardens once more. They watched the sunset, the sky ablaze with color. "Ethan," she said, "your actions will be remembered for generations. Humanity has earned respect and trust, not through force or conquest, but through ingenuity, courage, and morality. That is a lesson we will not forget. Then let us celebrate that way together. Humans and my people, united by respect, trust, and shared purpose. Perhaps together we can face any challenge the galaxy presents." Humans had proven their worth, not through strength alone, but through courage, intelligence, and morality. They had saved lives, inspired respect, and earned a place among the stars. For Ethan, it was a quiet victory, the kind that mattered most. He had acted when needed, relied on observation, ingenuity, and empathy, and helped bridge worlds. For Alira, it was a revelation. Humanity was not to be underestimated, but celebrated, respected, and trusted. The galaxy had changed, even if only slightly, because one human had chosen to act bravely. And in the glow of the palace lights, surrounded by gardens, technology, and the promise of cooperation, both human and princess knew that extraordinary things could happen when courage, intelligence, and morality guided the way. The days that followed were filled with planning, collaboration, and shared innovation. Humans worked alongside alien engineers, diplomats, and scholars. Strategic alliances formed, trade flourished, and cultural exchange enriched both species. Ethan's presence remained a symbol of what humans could achieve, a reminder that even one individual, guided by courage and ingenuity, could inspire change on a galactic scale. Alira often spoke of him to her people. The human who had saved her mother, defended her palace, and demonstrated the power of intelligence, morality, and courage. Children, students, and young officers looked up to him as an example. Humans, once underestimated, were now seen as partners and leaders. Ethan, however, remained grounded. He continued to share his knowledge, help solve problems, and act with humility. Humans, he knew, did not seek fame. They sought to do what was right. Recognition was a byproduct of action, not a goal. In the quiet moments, Alira and Ethan would walk through the gardens, discussing challenges, sharing ideas, and learning from one another. Trust, respect, and friendship grew, forming a bridge between worlds. Humanity's qualities, creativity, courage, adaptability, and morality, were no longer just stories from distant colonies. They had become real, recognized, and celebrated among the stars. As the first new ships departed on missions of exploration and diplomacy, Alira looked at Ethan and said, "Because of you, humans have a place among the stars. Not by chance, not by force, but because they act with intelligence and courage. That is a gift no one can take away." And so humanity's story continued, stronger, respected, and full of promise, guided by the qualities that had always defined them: courage, intelligence, morality, and the will to act when it mattered most.